Okay, everyone, welcome. Welcome to the Ed Collab gathering. We are so excited and honored to have you join us here today. The Ed Collab gathering is an opportunity for educators around the world, and we currently have. Oops, I'm hearing some feedback. We are so excited and honored. Sorry, technical. The Ed Collab gathering is an opportunity for educators around the world, and we currently have. Oops, I'm hearing some feedback. We are so excited and honored. Sorry, technical. The Ed Collab gathering. There we go. Sorry, that was me. I was hearing my own self. That's what was happening. Every gathering, there's always some little technical something, and the technical thing was I had a separate window open that I was listening to myself. So, hi everyone, welcome to the Ed Collab gathering. We have Carolyn, the lead of our tech team in the background, who's helping us run this opening session. She's like, I don't know what's happening, Chris, I'm so sorry. Thank you, Carolyn. So yeah, it was me, I had a window open. So starting over, welcome everyone to the Ed Collab gathering. The gathering is an opportunity for educators around the world, just like you, to join together to celebrate, to study, to practice, to push one another towards the shared practices that we want for ourselves, for our profession, and for all of the children that we serve. I do want to acknowledge that we come together today, this morning, well, evening for some of you, at a moment of crisis. There's crisis all around us. There's political crisis, there's social crisis, and something that we've been watching on the news, or you may have been experiencing in your own community, is a great number of natural crises as well, too. We have many family and friends of the Ed Collab, of this gathering day, that themselves are without power, or are right now trying to rebuild, or are supporting their communities and doing the same thing. We know more than I think we often do, a felt sense of how precious and how small our lives can be, how things can change in a moment, how natural wildfires or earthquakes, cyclones, tsunamis, flooding, how our lives are only for a set amount of time, and we never really know what tomorrow can bring. And the images on the news, or the sense that you feel yourselves, for those of you that are looking for family, or supporting family, or working towards your community, rebuilding, you probably have that sense. We, in my family, we have family in Puerto Rico that we still have not heard from, though we are assuming no news is good news, as I know many of you likely are holding on to that same feeling too for loved ones. We also have friends and family, many that I've spoken to over the last several weeks, who have been helping to rebuild in Houston, or are supporting folks in the Caribbean, or they themselves are worried about family in Florida. It's a challenging, difficult time because we're so hyper aware and feel that feeling of what it means to be lucky to be alive, to have the gift of being alive. And today at the gathering, it's always about celebrating literacy. It always is about studying the ways that we work together to support our profession and our children, but possibly in a really visceral way, more than in the past. It's also a time where we can decide today, what do you want to do with that precious life that you have, with this moment that you have? And it's a choice. It's a choice that every one of our presenters today is making in a big, bold way through this incredible set of sessions. If we look, and Carolyn, if you can move forward in the slides. If we look today, first of all, we'll start our day, and I'll have a more formal introduction in just a few minutes here, but we start our day with the incredible Dr. Debbie Reese that we are so honored and so lucky to begin our day. And it will start with exactly the feeling and knowledge and words that we need to begin our day. And I'll introduce her more formally in a bit, but just to say up front, if you're looking for people who are taking this precious life that we have and doing all they can with it. Dr. Debbie Reese is exactly one of those people. Then we also today are ending our day, and you can move to the next one, please, Carolyn. We're ending our day with, oh, excuse me, I should say, I'm following along with slides as you are too. How today works. If you are new to the EdCollab Gathering, all of the sessions are available on our website, gathering.theeducatorcollaborative.com. We see many of you already, and we ask that you continue to tweet along with us. Using the hashtag the EdCollab Gathering is the way that you will be able to connect with and support our presenters and also talk with one another across today. The way that we use it is you can use hashtag the EdCollab Gathering all day long for anything. When you're attending individual sessions, so after the opening keynote this morning, we have all of our series of workshops. As you attend those across today, you'll see that each one of those is numbered. You'll find that on our website. You'll also see that on Twitter as well, too. You can tweet using the hashtag the EdCollab Gathering, space, hashtag, and the number of the session. So for example, if you're attending workshop number 1 right after our opening keynote, you use hashtag the EdCollab Gathering, space, hashtag number 1, and that helps all of our presenters and our tech hosts to be able to kind of figure out what's the conversation that's related directly to the session. Now, just to say, just in case this happens for you, Twitter is smart, but it's not like super smart. So if you have hashtag number 1, it not only will pull all of the tweets for that particular session, but it might also pull any tweet that has the number 1 in it. So just in case you see some things unrelated, know that that's how it works. A couple of things to know as well. If you have any issues today, our website is, all of our sessions today are all recorded, and so you can go back and watch anything. So if your Wi-Fi drops out, or if our website isn't working at some point, all of our sessions today are recorded and will be there through March. So if you miss something, you'll be able to see it again. You also can follow us on our Twitter handle @theEdCollab, and all day long we will be posting the links to the direct video streams for all of our sessions. So if, again, the website's slow or you're having trouble getting onto it, if you follow us @theEdCollab, there you'll be able to find all of our direct streams. So at the end of today, also another beautiful end, we will end with Teaching Tolerance. If you don't know Teaching Tolerance, it's a project of the Southern Poverty Law Center, although why wouldn't you know Teaching Tolerance? Of course you do. But just in case you don't, Teaching Tolerance says of themselves, here we are, Teaching Tolerance mission is to reduce prejudice, improve intergroup relations, and support equitable school experiences for our nation's children. That's their formal way they describe themselves. I just know Teaching Tolerance as the place that has incredible resources for teachers to live in a social justice mindset, to support the ways that you look at your libraries, at your practice, and to bring your children, your families, your community together. We are so excited to end the day with them. Then across the entire day, we have a full agenda. All of our sessions are incredible and amazing, and as I said, are made up of incredibly powerful people who want to make great change in the world. For example, during session 1, we have a bunch of students joining us too. We're so excited. Then a couple of fun things before we get started here. So one is, for the first time ever, we have some EdCollab cool stuff if you'd like to sport your EdCollab-iness. You can go through our website. If you click on shop, there you'll be able to see some shirts and totes and other things. What you should know about this is, one, we just think it's kind of fun, but number 2, we are doing this as a way to support all of our free and low-cost online learning that we do for all of you. Today is a free gift for all educators everywhere, and there's 2 ways that you can support us in doing that. One is to purchase a cool thing if you'd like to have it. I'm particularly drawn to the mug that we designed. I'll join you for brunch right after I finish planning children's futures. Or anything else. So that's just a fun way that you can support the EdCollab. Another way to support the EdCollab is across our this coming year, we have 2 ways that you can learn online with us. I will be discussing more of that inside of a pre-taped session that you'll see. I believe it's during session 3. It's my workshop on how to learn with the EdCollab. So you also can support our free learning days like today by joining us in More Learning, which also is super low cost too. So moving into today, we are inside of a time that is full of great challenge And a day like today, we have that in our minds. And as people who are thankfully alive, I mean, just take a moment to just breathe and just think, if you are here standing with and beside communities that need us most. And so a tradition of the Ed Collab gathering, because this is a free day, is that we always, on this day, invite you to pay your joy forward. So if you are on our website, or if you search gathering.theeducatorcollaborative.com/charity, either through clicking on our website or through that link, you'll go directly to our charity page. You don't pay anything to be here today. All day long is volunteer. And so we ask, if you're learning from today, if you're struck by something that someone said, if you're going to change your practice from a session you attended, if you just are so happy to be here, we ask that you take what you normally would have spent on maybe lunch at a conference or on a coffee or maybe even on a registration, and you take that and you pay it forward to charities in need. So let's look at some of those. So we always ask our opening keynote to choose a charity. And if you could go to the next slide, please, Carolyn. We always ask our opening keynote to choose a charity. And so the main charity for today that we've adopted, and we are so proud to adopt, is the Association of Tribal Archives, Libraries, and Museums. They say we are an international nonprofit organization that maintains a network of support for Indigenous programs, provides culturally relevant programming and services, encourages collaboration among tribal and non-tribal cultural institutions, and articulates contemporary issues related to developing and sustaining the cultural sovereignty of Native nations. When we asked Dr. Reese to choose a charity for us, then we asked, so why is this important to you? Why is this a place that you'd like us to rally behind today? Here's what she said. She said, the Association of Tribal Archives, Libraries, and Museums is working hard to help people think critically about information and how it's presented. Rather than repeat established patterns of depicting how Indigenous people as being of the past, ATALM centers us as people of the present and the work we can do to affirm and support tribal sovereignty. And Carolyn, if you wouldn't mind going back to the slide just before. So this is one of our main charities for today, and we ask across the day that you consider supporting ATALM. It's an organization that lives and breathes the work that Dr. Reese will share with us in just a moment. We also, on that page, have a number of other charities that are supporting the natural disasters that have happened in our world recently, and we ask you to check those out on the page and to review them. So now, by way of introduction, I have so many things to say, and I will do it really quickly, I promise you, Dr. Reese. So to start, I'd like you to consider for a moment Flint, Michigan. This will connect for a reason. As a nation, we've become outraged by the water crisis there. We're hear stories about what the government, about what adults that should have known better have done to an entire community of people. Choices that they made based on economy and choices that they made because they thought that they were fine have destroyed an entire community's health. Children and adults, but let's focus on children. Children in that community have physically been changed by what's happened through the Flint water crisis. The pipes are full of lead and toxins and poisons that don't just wash out of children's bodies. Instead, they are there to stay for the rest of their lives. Think about that. Hundreds of thousands of children, an entire generation whose minds are now altered because of the choices adults made. And now you may live in Flint, or you may live near Flint, or maybe you don't. But imagine if you are in that community. If one of those children is your child, what would you do? What ends would you go to fight for your child's future and to fight for the future of your community? Probably a lot. So now imagine, that's Flint water crisis. Now imagine another crisis, the crisis of in America and Canada, and frankly, you're watching around the world, every country in the world, the crisis of how our countries have treated their Indigenous people. And it's not just historical, it's today. Imagine that instead of a Flint water crisis, you live there in Flint and it's one of your children that was affected. Imagine instead, and this might actually be you, but if not, imagine instead that you have a child who on television gets to see sports mascots and people dressed up as mascots ridiculing you and your culture and your history and your family that you're proud of. Imagine that your high school mascot does the same. Imagine that the books that you read in class do the same. Imagine that all of this builds up inside of you a fear or an anger or a hatred, or you learn statistics like Dr. Debbie Reese has shared with me, and I'm sure she'll share with you, about the number of Native youth who commit suicide or who become addicted to drugs or alcohol. Imagine that that crisis is happening to your child, and for some of you it has been, it is. You have a choice to make. What ends will you go to? What fight will you fight to protect that child and that community? And that's what today is about, and that's what all of Dr. Debbie Reese's work is about. Dr. Debbie Reese is the owner and author of American Indians and Children's Literature. It's an incredibly hard-hitting, powerful, amazing blog that does many things. Number one, through its research, it critiques misappropriations of Native peoples and literature, and it does so in an unabashed, I'm going to protect my child way that all of us would do the same. It also provides lists and lists and lists of incredible books, and there's not enough time for me to go over all of these, so I won't, but just incredible, incredible books that I have now made a part of my library, like John Harrington's Mission to Space. John Harrington is a Chickasaw enrolled member and was an astronaut. I did not know John Harrington's story until Dr. Debbie Reese shared it with us. Camille joins the pack in this incredible book, I'm Not a Number, about the schools in Canada that tried to take children's history and lives away. And it's an incredible, powerful, challenging picture book. And at the end, there's even some images of children in those schools. I am so honored and delighted to have Dr. Debbie Reese join us today. I know that this will be a powerful morning. If you'd like to follow her on Twitter, please do, as I do, and we will continue to tweet out her Twitter handle. And also please bookmark her blog, American Indians and Children's Literature. And so without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to you, Dr. Debbie Reese. Thank you very much for being here with us.
Okay, so you see me and you hear me, yes?
Yes, 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 good morning.
All right, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me, and I'm nervous too. Technology sometimes is our best friend, and sometimes it gives us all kinds of reasons to feel anxious. So I hope it all goes well. I was really taken and surprised and happy that you held up 3 of the books that I adore and recommend, because they do precisely what I think children's books can do. They can inform and shape what we know about people in the world, and people's history. So I like I Am Not a Number and Mission to Space and Kamik. These are terrific books. So I won't have to show them. I do have them beside me too, but I won't have to show them because you did that, Chris. So thank you for doing that. I am going to see if I can do the technology buttoning right and hit that screen share button and move over to my PowerPoint for today, which I'm going to be switching back and forth between my PowerPoint and the camera that lets you see me as I speak. Hope I don't goof it up, but let's see. Can I get a yes somehow that you can see my
yes,
screen?
You're good.
Okay, yay. All right. So I've titled my talk today, American Indians 101. Let's talk about children's and young adult books, because the focus of my work is primarily in the ways that Native peoples are depicted in children's books. In the middle of your screen, you see the name of my blog, American Indians and Children's Literature, and at the bottom is where we are today in the Ed Collaborative Gathering. So why do I do what I do? I do that work critiquing children's books. It's not fun. I don't enjoy it. I don't hate white people. I don't like the way that Native people are depicted in children's books, because children who are Native read those books too. This is my little sister's granddaughter, cute as she can be, full of energy, smiling. You can see that sparkle in her eyes. I want that to be the way she looks and feels when she walks in and out of your classrooms when she is 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 or 15 years old. I know it won't be that way you know, things happen in school, but I don't want her to be crying or frowning or angry or upset because of a book that you asked her to read. I also want her to have books that are positive, that affirm who she is as a person of the present day. See, she's in obviously sticking her head out of her mama's car. She's not riding a horse, which is predominantly what we see in depictions of Native people in children's books. They constantly toss us in the past as though we're not part of the present day. And of course, we are. And we need to have that very powerful message. I need you to carry her image in your head and heart every single day that you're picking up materials to use in your classrooms, because unless you do that, you're not going to see the historical and the stereotypical images for what they are, which is damaging to children like her. So I start with, I don't know what to call you. People, when they're trying to improve how they teach about Native peoples of the US or Canada, often start with, well, I don't know what to call you. And I'm going to try here to switch back over to out of the screen share. Am I there? Okay, there I am. I see. Okay, there I am. Yeah, I don't know what to call you. It makes people very uncomfortable. They don't want to say the wrong thing. And I perfectly understand that, because I don't want to say the wrong thing either. A key piece is to think about us as people of the present day who have ways of identifying who we are as people of the present day. I'm not just an Indian. That's a handy term. My next slide is going to say, should it be Indian? Should it be American Indian? Should it be Native American? Those are all commonly used terms, but there are best practice kinds of terms that we can use. So I'm going to move back over to this is hopefully going great. Okay, so I don't know what to call you. American Indian, Native American, best practice is to be tribally specific. So when you are moving around tomorrow or Monday in school, and you're talking about having been in a presentation today that was led by me, what I want you to do is say that you were in a session that was led by Debbie Reese, a tribally enrolled member of Nambe Pueblo, which is one of the 19 pueblos in New Mexico. Now that's a mouthful, but you can get it, you can say it, you can use it, and the person that you say that to is going to say, wait, what did you say? And there you have one of those things that we call in education a teaching moment, where you can share some of what you have come away with after spending this hour with me today. So labels and words that you find are highly problematic. So I want to take a quick look at words in textbooks. This is Holt's Call to Freedom. And when you flip open to the table of contents, right down there in that corner, you see pottery made by Native Americans. Now I'm going to switch back over here, because you can see that picture down in that right corner. It's pottery, but I want to say a little bit about that before we continue. All right, so that pottery in that corner is not made by Native Americans, because there is no such thing as a quote-unquote Native American. There is no such thing as a quote-unquote European that would make a certain pottery, something so general like pottery made by Europeans makes no sense, because you want to know, well, what European nation are we talking about? That should be your orientation, your disposition when you see that word Native American attached to something. Because Native American people make pottery, but not all of them make the same kinds of pottery. Here's a piece of pottery that is made at Acoma Pueblo. So when I saw that Native American pottery in that textbook, I thought, okay, well, which tribe made that? Which tribal nation has that kind of pottery? I recognized right away that it was Pueblo, because Pueblo pottery looks like this little pot I'm holding up. This one is from Acoma Pueblo, one of the 19 pueblos. And this one here is made by my little sister, who I showed you her granddaughter there a little bit ago. This has a sheen to it. And this is the sheen that comes from the natural clay, the mica that's in the clay that's on our reservation. So the people who make pottery at my village, at my nation, this is what it looks like. So there's a lot to know about terms and the ways that they can mislead us or collapse a whole range of diversity into a single image. We can do better than that. That's why we're here today, to try and do better. Okay, back to my slideshow. Okay, so that's what you see in a textbook. So being able to look critically at textbooks, and that's one of the things that I want people to do, is look critically at textbooks. And you can point this stuff out to kids too. Doing that takes the learning for them to a whole new level. So flipping through to section 1, most textbooks start like this: the earliest Americans. But the thing is, we never called ourselves Americans. Someone else came here, called this continent America, and then started using earliest Americans or first Americans to talk about us. That's an incorrect use of who we are. It's not right. It's not accurate. It erases our nationhood and our sovereignty. We have always been Nambe Pueblo, or Nambe Owinge, to use the complete Tewa name for who I am. The history of the different peoples in the country and how they all came to be. Oh no, that's my daughter. I'm going to have to figure out how to stop that. Ooh, I don't know how to stop it. There. My daughter calling me from Washington, D.C., where she is a lawyer, and I'll say a little bit about her in a few minutes. But anyway, so words can inadvertently erase who we are as peoples that were here before the people who came to call this eventually the United States of America were here. So looking critically at the words in textbooks is something I would like teachers to do. I'd like you to point that out. There's over 500 federally recognized nations in the United States. I'm of the group that we call Pueblo, but if you look at this map of the Pueblo people in New Mexico, you see all those little red dots there? There's 19 different Pueblos in New Mexico. There's some up north, kind of close to Colorado, and there's some further west, close to Arizona. If you've ever driven that area, you know that Colorado is Rocky Mountains, so is the geography there is very different from what you see when you head towards Arizona. That makes a difference in our material culture, the things that we use from the ground to create the things that we use in the present and in the past. So like I said, the pottery that we have at my village has a lot of mica. The clay has a lot of mica in it, and so we have that kind of pottery there. Across these different pueblos, you have different languages, stories, systems of government, and relationships with other nations. We have governments, and most people don't know that. Most people in the United States and most textbooks, social studies textbooks, talk about federal and state governments, sometimes city governments. It depends on the textbook that you might be using. But what you do not see is tribal governments. But we are here as sovereign nations within the United States. This here is my the tribal seal for my village. So this is on the letterhead that we have there. That's Nambe Owinge is is the word for who we are in our language. In the center of the seal is the kiva. That's like a church. That's a place of worship. Important things happen in there. Religious teachings happen in there. They're not scary places. I don't actually have this in my slides, but it's one of the things I talk about. Gerald McDermott's book that won the Caldecott Prize in the 70s has a kiva being a scary place. That's a misrepresentation of our religious teaching space. That's a problem. There's a lot of award-winning books that have those kinds of problems. So if you were going to be in New Mexico, I might say, hey, come on up and visit. I'll show you around. And you'd probably head north out of Santa Fe on the interstate, and you take 503, and then you start meandering along the river, and you're going to come to a place on the road that says you are entering the Nambe Reservation. That's important because now you are in, once you cross that sign, you are in our jurisdiction where we make the rules about how fast you can drive. If you're driving too fast, you're going to get pulled over by our tribal police and you're going to pay a ticket, and you're going to do that in our tribal judge's office, in our court offices. Most people have no idea that this even exists, and it does. And it matters tremendously to those of us who are citizens or tribal members of any of the 500 nations that are here today. What you don't see there is a flag for the state of New Mexico because our primary relationships are with the federal government and with other governments as well. The Pueblo people, being in what we now call New Mexico, had relationships with various nations of the world. The first one that we had to deal with was Spain, and then Mexico, and then of course the United States. Now when the people of Spain came into our homelands, they saw that, well, you know, this is their homeland, this is their land, this is their place, they are nations. And to signify an understanding of who we were then as tribal nations, the crown of Spain gave us a cane, and that's one of the canes you see in that picture. Mexico did the same thing. When Mexico gained its independence from Spain, the Mexican heads of state recognized that we were sovereign entities and gave us another cane. And then when that part of Mexico became part of the United States, we got another cane. That's the third one on the right, and that one is from Abraham Lincoln. So we have these three canes in every pueblo today that signify this relationship that we have had with prior nations. Those canes are kept by the existing or current or present day governor for each of the pueblos, because we do select leaders for our sovereign nations. Each time this election or appointment changes, these canes go to that next person. They are very important because of what they symbolize. There's a lot to know and understand about the nationhood or nation concept within Native peoples, and here's a really good book for that. It's called Nation to Nation, Treaties Between the United States and American Indian Nations, and it's published by the National Museum of the American Indian. So I urge you to get that. It's full of images of some of the treaties that were signed going back to pre-colonial days. A really good book for you to have. Okay, now I should switch over and talk a little bit. I'm afraid I'm going to run over time doing this. So you guys over there are going to have to help me with that. Yeah, because the switching back and forth is a new thing for me. I usually just do a straight up PowerPoint when I do webinars. But so I wanted to say a little bit about what teachers can do. It's an interesting thing that we find a reluctance in this country to pick up a book and mark in it. We have some way of thinking. We're taught, don't write in the book. I want you to write in books. I want teachers to pick up books that have problems in them. Get out a Sharpie. You know, buy some books at used book sales that you want to do this with. Get 10 copies of Little House on the Prairie. And then get out a Sharpie when you're going to show the kids what they should look at in terms of looking critically at content in a book. And then use that Sharpie to highlight passages and draw arrows pointing to those passages. Show them that books can be wrong and they can mark in books. They can state, they can speak to the text that's in front of them with their own Sharpies, with their own pencils. I think this is a really important thing that teachers can do to help kids become better users of the things that we give to them, or that they will find as they move on through their school years. People don't like that, writing in books, but I think it's a good thing to do. Okay, I guess I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint where I'm most comfortable. So critical lesson plans. Use children's books to see how history and people are not done right. And of course, I'm talking about Native people. So here is an important one because this is new. This is a historical moment. June 12th, 1967, the case Loving v. Virginia came before the Supreme Court. This couple was in love. They wanted to be married, but the laws of Virginia said they couldn't do that because they said, quote unquote, she was black and he was white, and they could not do that. So it went to the Supreme Court. But I'm going to back up a little bit to when this couple decided they wanted to get married. They went to Washington, D.C., because they were able to get married in Washington, D.C. And if you pull up their marriage license, you see what she wrote on that license. She said that she was Indian. In other words, a Native American of a particular tribe, and she was stating that on a legal document. But because she looks African American, her case and their case went forward as if she was an African American woman trying to marry a white American man. So there's her application that said she was Indian. She said that when she applied for that marriage license, and she said that in July 2004. I am Indian, and she said the tribal name Rappahannock. In the marriage license and in 2004, she was asserting her citizenship and the sovereignty of the Rappahannock Nation. She was making sure that people know who she thinks she is. And yet here we are in the present day ignoring that. This children's picture book, The Case for Loving, came out 2 years ago. The widespread ignorance about Native identity and why it matters is in this picture book published by Scholastic. When I saw that it was coming out, I thought, oh boy, they better not mess this up, because her identity mattered to her, and it matters to her nation, and it matters to me, and it should matter to you, because you're a teacher. You're trying to help people be better educators, be better teachers with respect to Native people. So there's widespread ignorance, and this is what it looks like. Oh, before I go to the next slide, I want to say this. As teachers, we use our red, or some teachers use red pencils. Sometimes we don't. I'm using this with you today in a couple of instances because you're adults and I think it's okay. Brain research shows that when you see an image, it goes right to your brain. All the words that I'm talking to you, saying to you, speaking to you about this book, they lag way behind. The image gets there first. So image is very powerful. It's something that we really need to pay attention to, because we can say all the words we want to, but that image is there, getting itself all nicely placed inside of your brain. And I don't want that particular image to do that. I don't want that to be in your brain like that. So here's a big red X. Next time you go into the bookstore and you see that book, I don't want you to just see the book cover and think, oh yeah, I think Debbie said something about that book. I want you to say, oh yeah, Debbie put that big red X on that book because something's wrong with it. So I've been using the red X on a lot of my materials for that reason, because image is very powerful, and I want to interrupt the way that image situates itself in our brains. So here's why I was worried about the book. On the top is the way that the writers of the book described Mildred. Let's see, there was Mildred Jeter was part African American, part Cherokee. But what most folks in Central Point noticed was how thin she was. That's how she got the nickname String Bean. The important piece is that the writers identified her as being part African American and part Cherokee. Wrong. She was not part Cherokee. She was Rappahannock, and she said that. She didn't say half of me is Rappahannock. She said, I am Rappahannock. Any of you who are here today listening, if you say that you're a citizen of the United States of America, you are 100% a citizen. You are not half a citizen or a quarter of a citizen of the United States. This is an important concept. This idea that nationhood is what is important when you're thinking about Native people. Part African American, part Cherokee doesn't work if you're talking about nationhood. She said who she was. I saw the way they wrote about it in that first printing of the book. I gave a critique. It's on my website. You can read that. And so they edited, they changed it, they revised it, but they didn't make it any better because they went from the wrong tribe to the more generic, equally problematic Native American. They could have said who she was. They could have corrected the long record of misidentification of who she was. So when I think about the way that they identified her and the way that the world saw her as being quote unquote African American, I bring this idea forward that with Native people, citizenship is what matters. Appearance doesn't. When we look at a person and we make assumptions about who they might be based on their physical appearance, we're just going to get ourselves in trouble. You might look at this young woman here and think, oh yeah, she's an African American. Her dad is, but she's a citizen of the Navajo Nation. You might look at this guy and you might say, well, that's a white guy. And yeah, maybe he is got some white ancestry, but he's actually the chief of the Cherokee Nation. Any of us here don't get to decide how a nation determines what its citizens need to be in order to be a citizen of that nation. Appearance is not what matters. Each of these federally recognized nations make their own decisions about how they will count their citizens and their tribal members. So that's a biggie. You might have, for example, you might have kids in your classroom who are actually citizens of a specific tribal nation and don't have dark hair and high cheekbones. They might look like one of these two people in this current slide, and you might not be picking up on the fact that you're probably trouncing on who they are when you talk about Native content in the curriculum that you're using. Oh, I'm going to come back over here and say a little bit about that? That's a real problem. This whole citizenship thing. I want you to, when you sign off, or maybe sometime during the day, look up the Indian Child Welfare Act, because it's about a historic moment, historical time period when Native children were taken from their families and placed in non-Native homes without the permission of Native people. That was destructive to our communities, and Congress got involved and passed the Indian Child Welfare Act that said Native children cannot be adopted outside of their communities without the community's permission. So that has been in the news and something that you should know about, because what you saw on Dr. Phil, when a Cherokee child was caught in this particular court case, baby Jessica, showed how deep the ignorance is about Native people, and the fact that we have determinations that we can make because of our treaty relationships with various countries. That sovereignty, that status that we have, makes a difference in adoption. You can't just adopt a Native baby. That Native baby's community or their nation has a say in what will happen with that child's adoption. These are really important concepts that we just don't learn about in school. Okay, so essential understandings. We're still here. We care about accuracy, and we care about our sovereignty. So let's look at some children's books. Let's look at this data. There's a place at the University of Wisconsin called the Cooperative Children's Book Center. They maintain data on children's books that are published every year. This one is the data from 2015 shown in a graphic format. On the right, you see a white child with lots of mirrors, and on the left, you see children of color and a Native child that don't have that many mirrors. What this graphic does is pull together data, some numbers, that the CCBC collects every year, and combines that with an idea of books can be mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. That's a metaphor that was developed by Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop. You're hearing it a lot. If you're paying any attention to children's literature today, you're hearing a lot of mirrors and doors kinds of conversations about books. That comes from an African-American scholar, and she should be credited for that idea, because it has a lot of merit and it's being used a lot in current conversations. So you pull those two ideas together, and on the right you have this white child, and I'm going to show you my husband, my sweetie. That's when he was in the 3rd grade. My husband is white. He was raised in Pennsylvania, and when he was growing up, when he was like, 3rd grade, I guess, he had lots of books. He had lots of options for thinking about what he could be when he grew up, or imagining his playtime. The idea is that white children have lots of mirrors. That is my husband, I guess like 45 years ago. It was the case then, and it is the case now, that there are far more books for him that function as mirrors for him than there are for the other children on the left side of this image. So you have here again Ellie, my sister's grandchild. If you're looking at all of the books that came out in 2015, 0.9% of them reflect her, or possibly reflect her. I take a deep dive in this data. Of those 0.9% books that came out in 2015, half of them were not any good. What the data that is generated from CCBC is just data. It isn't qualitative or analyses that are done of the content of the books themselves. So that would be 0.4% of the books that came out in that year that would accurately reflect Ellie's life as a child of the present day. That has to change, and that can change because teachers have so much power to affect change in how people think about others, and you have also a lot of power to change what comes out in the marketplace. I don't know if you know that, I think it was in the early 90s, teachers started writing to the Crayola company because children were using the Indian red crayon to color worksheets of Native people, and that was racist. They recognized it as racist, so Crayola changed the name of the crayon. Teachers can mobilize and make change happen. So what I want for Ellie is books like these ones by Cynthia. This is Cynthia Lytick Smith. She's a Muskogee Creek writer. This is her book, Jingle Dancer. And in here, she talks about nationhood. This is the author's note that's in her book. In this story, Jenna's a member of the Muskogee Creek Nation. Bingo. And she's also of Ojibwe or Chippewa. Anishinaabe descent. So in this author's note, you can find information that will help you develop a lesson plan that does far more than show Native peoples as a people of the past, as a culture without a nation. That nation is key to who we are, and I'm going to say that again and again. And there's Jenna right there, and the cool thing about this is that's Jenna in the present day, wearing jeans and tennis shoes, walking down the street. She's not riding a horse. She's not wearing moccasins. She's a kid of the present day, because we are people of the present day, and we wear traditional clothing sometimes in certain places, but for the most part, we are just wearing the same kinds of things that most people wear. This is Tim Tingle. Here's his How I Became a Ghost. It's a Trail of Tears story about the Choctaw Nation. Tim is Choctaw, and when he opens his book, Chapter 1, Talking Ghost, Choctaw Nation, the word nation is right there at the start of it, because going back to 1830, people then were using the word nation. That has kind of fallen out over time, and that has to come back into the way that that peoples of the United States, no matter who you are, speak about the native people of this country. We were nations then, and we're nations now. This is Eric Gansworth's book, If I Ever Get Out of Here. That's Eric on the left. His book, if you're a music lover, you will love this book. Those headphones are on that cover for a reason. If I Ever Get Out of Here, those of you who are music lovers know what that comes from. Every chapter in this book is a song from either Queen or from the Beatles. And it's a story set in the present day. This little boy is, it's in the 70s, and he's going to be crossing the border with a white family to go to a concert. And when they're approaching the border, the white father who's driving them up there suddenly realizes that he had not asked whether or not, how can I do this? That you need a passport to get across the border. And the native character in the book says, I got my ID card the summer I was 10. It's right there in the book. If you're reading this book with kids, there's the information. It listed my name, reservation, address, and clan, and it had a small photo of me glued on and was signed by the Tuscarora Nation. There it is again. Nation is part of who we are. It's part of what we know. It's part of our lives. And so you're going to find it in the stories that Native people are writing, and you can pass that on to children in your classrooms. Okay, gonna try and come back over here to the video. Okay, hey, that worked faster this time. All right, so my next slide is about the power of stereotyping. This is very crucial. When most of us in this country are inundated without knowing that we're inundated with stereotypical images of Native people. You don't know that they're stereotypical. And you can't teach about stereotypes if you don't know that they're stereotypes. I kind of lost my train of thought because I glanced over here. I'm in my husband's office at the moment, and he's got a book on his desk that I'm just going to show right here. We can't teach what we don't know. He teaches math, so that book is about math, but it's also about knowing. We have to know that we don't know so that we can do better. And that's what I'm hoping to give you today is a look at the ways that things are not done right so that you can do right, so that you can recognize that you don't know and that you can do better in your classroom teaching. Oh, Carolyn, I see a note here that I have 15 minutes left. Is that, and that was 20 minutes ago. I don't know. Tell me right now, how much time do I have? 15 minutes. Okay. All right. I might not come back live because I want to try and get through my slides. I think that's important. Okay. So one of the things that we have heard is that when teachers are using books like the ones that I recommend that have us set in the present day, where kids are riding bicycles, going to school on a school bus, Native kids are, you will often hear a kid saying, but there's no Indians in this book. And that shows the power of stereotyping, because this is what they think is Indian. The next series of slides, and it matters. This is an article that you should all download. It's on the internet. You can find it, of warrior chiefs and Indian princesses. It is a research article that documented the harm that is done to Native and non-Native children by stereotypical images. The images that were used when they did this particular study are mascots, but they're also used Pocahontas from the Disney film. So look for this article and download it because it's a crucial one for you to understand the damage that is being done with stereotypes. And you don't want to bring that damage into your classroom. You want to stop that. So of course, mascots. This is Chief Linawick, who used to dance at the University of Illinois. He's not there anymore. I'm part of the reason he's not there anymore. Native people are saying no to mascots. You should say that too. Don't try to tell us that we should feel honored by that, because it's not honoring anyone to use stereotypical imagery of us. Toys. The kids in your classrooms have toys like this, and they get even more exposure when they're tied to a movie like the Disney Lone Ranger movie that came out. This is a set of Lego toys that are full of stereotypes. Peter Pan. Oh my goodness, I just realized I'm really going all out on Disney. Peter Pan has a lot of stereotypical images in there that people kind of tend to ignore. Native people don't ignore them. Those things are doing harm to our children and to non-Native children as well. In the grocery store, you're all walking through the aisles and you don't see these things, but we do. There's Calumet double-acting baking powder with a stereotypical image on that, and Land O'Lakes butter, that Indian maiden is on that. There's a lot of things out there. That's just kind of in the environment. When we start talking about books, popular ones that you can get at Kmart and Walmart and Target and all those department stores. This is a dearly loved figure. It's Clifford the Big Red Dog, but what happened to his happy-go-lucky face? Oh, right. Can't be happy-go-lucky if you're being an Indian. You got to be stern. Got to be wearing feathers. Got to have face paint. All of that is stereotypical. And I'd be willing to bet if I could ask his name just went right out of my head. The person who drew this picture, if I could ask him, so what's that? What's going on with Clifford's paw there? I would bet he's about to say how, because in popular culture, people think that's how Native people say hello. That's another stereotypical kind of thing that floats out there about who we are. And here is another image from a popular book. This is Grizzly Bob from Berenstain Bears Go to Camp. So you see this kind of imagery a lot, this big headdress and this feathers and moccasins and all of that. And it's generally stereotypical. There's generally nothing around this kind of imagery to say, what nation are we talking about? Does anybody wear things like that? And the answer is yes. But you need to know that you don't know so that you can ask the question in the first place. Who uses clothing like this? We see these in message books. This is Brother Eagle, Sister Sky. And this is one of the most popular out there that just makes Native people crazy, because it's supposed to be about Chief Seattle. Supposed to be his speech. It's not. One thing is that you see throughout the book Plains Indians, and Chief Seattle was of one of the Northwest Coast tribes. So why are we using Plains Indian imagery for something that supposedly was said by Chief Seattle? That's a problem. There's many other problems with this. If you're looking at the image on the right, you can see through that Indian, suggesting that Native people don't exist anymore. That white family, yeah, they're right there. Can't see through them. They're in the present day. Gosh, Indians are such good people for helping all the white people in the world know how to do good things. That's why people like this book. We're like the conscience of America in terms of taking care of the land. Fact is, there's a lot of problems with this book. I've written about that. You can find it on my site. I can read books. This one is one that I read when I was a little kid. Danny and the Dinosaurs. If you have that in your classroom or the library in your school, you'll find it. But here we have stereotypes. When you get to page 6, he saw Indians, he saw bears, he saw Eskimos. That's stereotypical information. Classic books like Little House on the Prairie, lots to say about that. If you did a close look at Little House on the Prairie, and we could do like, I usually do this like a hour and a half kind of a session on Little House on the Prairie. What's the point of view? What is it telling us about Native peoples? Are the facts right is what I want teachers to do with books like that. And I don't want you to actually use Little House on the Prairie in a school classroom. I want you to rip the chapters apart and do something more critical with it. But you got to start with the facts about what we're talking about with that period of history. Indian Territory was created in 1804. In 1830, the Indian Removal Act was passed, and that removal happened. It was happening over a long period of time. And by 1845, almost 100,000 Choctaw, Cherokee, Chickasaw, Creek, Seminoles, and Osages were living in that place called Indian Territory. And then 19 years later, Laura Ingalls was born, and Charles moves his family to Indian Territory in 1868 when she was 2 years old. The Indians that were living there, the native peoples that had been moved there, had built schools, had built towns. They had adopted, by 1845, they had adopted a lot of the kinds of things that European Americans brought to this continent. And if you look up pictures of them, you will find, I'm going to skip through this in this video. Get this video, We Shall Remain, and watch the one about the Trail of Tears, because you will see visually the difference in what Laura Ingalls tells us in that book and the fact of who Native people were at that time period. Her book is taught in 3rd grade classrooms across the country. It's in the national curriculum in China, and it's so wrong. It misrepresents Native people and what was going on at that time period. So I really would like that book to just go away, not be used in classrooms, that it be used in teacher education programs to understand point of view and bias and how that can damage what children know about Native peoples. A quick tip, look out for words like squaw and papoose. You'll see them all over the place. I actually had someone write to me and say, I need your help. I already talked to another squaw. So she was thinking of me as a squaw, not as a woman. These kinds of words are specific to certain nations, but they're not specific to all nations. We don't use that word, squaw. That's an Algonquin word. Same as papoose. There was a Will Short puzzle in the New York Times, the Native American word for baby, and the answer was papoose, except that was wrong. A Native nation's word for baby. It's not everyone's word. So it's an example of the way that this kind of stereotypical, biased flattening of who we are percolates all through the country. What I want you to teach kids to do is to use woman instead of squaw, or papoose. I'm going to say, or baby instead of papoose. I want you to find out, if you're talking about the Pueblo people, what's our word for woman or baby? And if you're going to use a native word, find out the right one to use. Don't use the ones that kind of float around there. What's on our bookshelves? This is a really good article that I would like you to look up. Maybe you can pump out the slide into the Ed Collaborative chat window or the hashtag. It's a really important study because it was done in Atlanta, Georgia. Education professor named Thomas Crisp went into preschool classrooms there and just counted the books on the shelf. Most of them were white, had white characters in them. Only 67 of the 1,169 books that they cataloged, only 67 were about marginalized populations, and of that 67, only 7 were about Native peoples. 5 of them were historical, about Columbus or Thanksgiving, and 1 was a work of folklore. And so here's a quick look at some of the Columbus books. I would put a big red X across all of those. You probably have Step Into Reading in your classroom. So we have these early readers, we have these popular Who Was Christopher Columbus kind of thing. And then on the right, we have Peter Siss's book, Follow the Dream. You know, Peter Siss does some terrific work in children's literature, but this one is not one of those terrific books. Thanksgiving books, go to Barnes & Noble. You will find displays like this coming up pretty soon, because I always get out there way earlier than they should. I've done extensive studies of books about Thanksgiving. The one called Thanksgiving Day in particular is one that I've worked on a lot. You'll find that on my website. I want to take a quick look at institutional racism in cataloging and how we view Native stories. This is Noah's Ark. And when you look it up on WorldCat, that's a librarian's catalog, the subjects that it's listed for, that Noah's Ark is listed under: Noah's Ark juvenile literature, Noah's Ark pictorial works, Noah's Ark Bible stories. So we get a sense that this Bible stories in particular is an important story. We know that. But when we look at the way that Native stories that have meaning to Native people who tell them are categorized, we see something different. Here, Salish Indians, folklore; Kootenai Indians, folklore; Coyote, legends. Now, either we have to change all the subject headings for all the Christian Bible stories in the world, or we have to start giving Native peoples and the stories that we tell the same kind of respect for our sacred stories as Christian stories get. So this is an important one too that I think you can show kids. In many libraries, the The Native stories should be over in the world religions area of the library, but right now most of them are shelved over there with Little Red Riding Hood, which is trivializing of things that are deeply significant to Native people. Lots of information to share. National Congress of American Indians, look this up online. You will find this booklet on their website under their publications tab. It's a very good graphic introduction to much of what I've been saying today about who Native peoples are as nations. Racist, that word. People are petrified by that word. They think, I'm not racist. And I agree, you're not. I'm not either. But as a society, we're all pretty ignorant, and we will fail again and again. It's okay to fail. It's not okay to turn away and not try to make it right. I used to like Five Chinese Brothers when I was growing up. I loved that book. I learned not to, because I learned that it stereotypes Chinese people. So it gets a big red X. Little House on the Prairie, it gets a big red X. And my tip for you is to hit the pause button. You're likely to be wrong in what you're doing. It's not necessarily your fault. You are socialized in a country that gets it wrong over and over and over again. So with regard to Native content, you're likely to be wrong, and then you're going to end up on social media. These two slides that I have next are ones that have been circulating in Native social media. This was earlier this week. Dear parents, remember tomorrow we're going to celebrate Native American Day. Dress up your child as a Native American. Be creative. The parent who reported this said that 1/3 of the class had done that, and it was stereotypical. I don't know if this teacher has yet been called into the office to talk about this, but that does happen when teachers are do missteps and things online. Their administrations hear about that. Don't be that teacher, is what I'm saying. Here's another example. This was a Native parent in Canada circulated this. She wrote, this was given to my 14-year-old daughter as an exercise in her humanities course. And if you look at the worksheet here, number 4, an Aboriginal person is an Indian. And look at that. They have darky for an African American. The problems, well-meaning teachers trying to do right in schools when they don't have the proper knowledge and understanding to be right in the first place. So that's me. That's Jingle Dancer again. That's my email address and my Twitter handle. I want to talk. I want to help. And I am going to stop talking because I think I might be out of time. I want to go back over to the live feed. Okay, there we are. All right. Am I out of time? Shall I stop?
Well, we'd like to have you talk all day, actually. But if there's any last thoughts, we have a few minutes if you'd like.
Okay, yeah, I have the couple things that I had set aside here. That was tough. Going back and forth is hard. I'm sweating it up over here.
we are so grateful for your sweating, I have to tell you.
Okay, all right, so get this book. It's not in my slides because it's one of the things that I wanted to kind of flip back and forth in and share. It's An Indigenous People's History of the United States by Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz. This is a very powerful book because it has the kinds of information that I share when I have more time to share about the history. And this history is going to crush you. It crushes me, and I'm reading it a lot. I'm spending a lot of time with it because one of my colleagues and I are adapting it. This can be used with teachers. This can be used in high school, seniors, probably, maybe juniors, depends on, of course, the skills of the kids in the classroom. But we're adapting it for young adult readers. So every day for the last 5 months, I sit down with my writing colleague and we analyze everything that's in here, and sentence by sentence, and try to make it something that will be most useful for teen readers, so that teachers can use this in the classroom. So it's kind of like the Howard Zinn book, People's History of the United States, in terms of the content. It's really pushing back on problematic history. So this is one that you can get for yourself if you're a teacher, and it's one that you can look for in as a young adult format in about 2 years. And the other teacher resource that I wanted to share is this one. It's called Lessons from Turtle Island. It's about using picture books in the classroom, in elementary school classrooms, and it's loaded with book titles and lessons to use with those particular books that you can do, things that you can do in the classroom. So this one is really, really good. Lessons from Turtle Island. And I was going to share this one, but here it is. You did that, mission to space. So I'll just stop right there.
Thank you, Debbie, so much. Honestly, just a big round of applause. We can't hear it because we're all on technology, but Twitter, I've been getting text messages, just your message, your voice. I appreciate so much, and it's one of the big reasons we're so happy to have you here, that as you're talking, so many things that I know all of us, and myself included, we were saying, oh my gosh, I never thought of that. Wow, I didn't know that. And a few things I just want to reflect on. One is your line, you need to know what you don't know. And you've done that for so many of us this morning. And thank you. And like I tweeted, I have Land O'Lakes butter in my refrigerator. That is what we have bought. And now I know better, and now I will do better. And that will include talking to my kids about why we're not going to have it anymore, taking it out of our refrigerator, and also writing a letter to the company.
Right.
And then we'll do more. And it's only because of you. So to all of you, right now, if you feel inspired, if you feel worried, if you feel ashamed that you've made some mistake, that's okay to feel bad, but what's more important is that you act. I had a very long and gracious Twitter conversation over direct message with Debbie several months ago, and in it, one of the things she said is, we have to fight like hell. She said, you have to fight like hell. We all have to fight like hell. Children's lives depend on it. And that's what we need to do with our one precious life that we have right now. So just one more time, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me. And I guess I'll close with, I've been forefronting, emphasizing Native children throughout my presentation. But children who are not Native, they're the ones that grow up to be the gatekeepers in Congress and in publishing houses. And if they grow up ignorant, then we're letting a cycle go on uninterrupted. So yeah, we have to fight like hell. We have to break that cycle. So thank you for having me. And I hope people will write to me and come to my site.
Yes, please do. And to that point, earlier I said the Flint water crisis. You have to imagine, as Debbie's been sharing with us, because I own Land O'Lakes butter. I didn't know about the Loving's background. I didn't know so much. My kids have those textbooks, those textbooks about New York State that say Native Americans in it. Now I know better because I've engaged with Debbie's work, because I'm listening, because I love her site, because I follow her on Twitter. Just like the Flint water crisis put poisoned water into communities, this is poison that goes into all of our communities, not just our Native communities. Our white children, our biracial children, every child is experiencing what we as adults, who now need to know better and do better, are pumping into our classrooms and into the world around us. So please join Dr. Reese in her fight. I'm with you. We're all here with you. And the only way to do it is to continue to know better. So I'm just actually going to plop up, oops, let me share too. Just one more time. Here is her contact information. Please make sure that you are following her on Twitter. It is the lifeblood for me to stay connected and learn. You can email her directly, and also her blog, American Indians and Children's Literature, is an absolute must follow. And then, Carolyn, if you wouldn't mind putting up the last, the slide that you have up. So coming up in just a few minutes, we're moving on to session 1 of our workshop. So a reminder again, all of our sessions, you'll find them if you follow us on Twitter at the EdCollab. There we'll be pushing out the links. You can also find them off of our main agenda or on our Gathering website, gathering.theeducatorcollaborative.com. Every session, you'll have workshops to choose from. These are 4 that are coming up that are all incredible. We have Kate Roberts, who's sharing from her almost out brand new book that's coming. We have Kristen Zemke and Pernille Rip, who are sharing on visual literacy and ways of studying and media critically, and in many of the ways that Dr. Reese was sharing this morning, helping your children get out a Sharpie and do something, not just absorb what's around them, but really be critical around it. Elizabeth Lacey Schonenberger will work with upper grade and secondary teachers on fostering independence in your classroom, because we know that that's something we all are thriving and striving towards. And then we're very excited to have Christina, James, and students join us on a session about creating a TEDx experience for your own kids. So again, I will gush beyond past this one moment, but thank you, Dr. Reese, for joining us this morning and starting us off in such an important, critical, and powerful way.
Thanks for having me. I guess I can hang up now.
Yes, you can. Yes, yes.
Okay. All right.
And yep. And thank you all. Enjoy your day here at the Ed Collab.
Oh, and I'm tuning in for some of these sessions. So
Awesome. Awesome. I am too. See you soon.
bye-bye.
Bye.